1. I live on the main floor. My housemate and landlord lives on the upper floor. It's just the two of us. I'm always teasing my housemate about scary stuff, since I know she spooks easily. But a few weeks ago she seemed pretty upset. She said she kept having nightmares, and I wasn't home at the time, so it freaked her out even more. I didn't really think much of it, just figured it was a typical nightmare. Lately, she's been spending long hours at school studying, and I've been home alone most of the time. I swear it sounds like somebody is walking around upstairs at times. She has a few pets, so I've attributed a lot of it to them playing. But that particular night, they were downstairs with me. I heard what sounds like walking, and someone possibly opening a cardboard box that was sealed with tape. The pets were sitting there with me the entire time, so I really don't have an explanation for the noise. Didn't sound like a mouse or critter that was stuck in the walls. Also didn't sound like the heat or water, or any of the normal house noises. There are neighbors nearby, but not so close that I usually hear their activity, especially at night time. That night, I actually went over to the window to see if her car was in the driveway, thinking she had come home when I wasn't paying attention. Nope, just me home alone. This has happened a few more times since then. I've noticed a few other weird things. I heard some, very slight whispering during the day, but I've never been certain if it wasn't a TV or radio upstairs, or maybe even a neighbor's kid playing out back. My hearing really isn't the best, so I can't rule it out. Never went upstairs to investigate because it's basically just her bedroom, bathroom, and an empty spare room upstairs, so I don't like to intrude in her personal stuff. Also, a few days ago I heard the sound of loud buzzing, like a cell phone left on a table, and figured she forgot her phone. Didn't say anything about it, but when she got home she told me she was nervous during an exam, as she left her cell phone in her backpack, and was afraid it might ring during her exam. She had her phone all day and mine was on my bed the whole time. So again, I'm not sure what the noise was. I don't want to tell her about what's been going on and scare her, especially since I hate to leave her scared when I'm not home. Also, I'm not even sure if what I've been hearing is legit. Like I said, I'm a little hard of hearing. Seeing her pets look around at the same time I heard the walking was definitely a little weird. It also seems sometimes like she just likes having me in the house, just because it gives her comfort having somebody else around, even though we don't really spend much time together. I've never really noticed anything until recently, but to be fair, I have a bit of a drinking problem, so I've often been too preoccupied or passed out to pick up on things. It's just lately I've sobered up that I'm noticing things. 2. So I've wanted to tell more people about this before, but not many believed me or were very confused by my explanation. Back during college, my friends and I attended a hackathon event at UNC Chapel Hill. Due to many difficulties and low morale, we decided to call it quits and head back to our campus at 3 a.m. We were kinda tired, but since they supply loads of sodas and snacks, I was feeling quite awake still. Since I have no sense of direction or navigation, I need a GPS to drive. At this time, I hadn't gotten a fancy Droid phone, Google Maps, so I relied on an older GPS at this time. I accidentally took a wrong turn and ended up on the back roads instead of the highway. But this was a bit of a plus since there's no one ever on the back roads. The first unusual light was a red light that looked like a red radio tower light that first appeared to be behind my car. At first I thought this was some sort of small receiver light in my car, reflecting on the back window. But thinking back, I've never seen this light before, and to this day I haven't seen it again. I realized something was following me very close. Then something along the size of a motorcycle light turned on, but this light was unusually high for a motorcycle to actually be possible. Being the type who prefers the window down instead of the AC on, I noticed I couldn't hear the sound of a motorcycle engine either, even over the wind. I wish I could say more happened, but not really. The lights just vanished after some time, which is weird as nothing passed me, and there was nothing but straight road. So either something unusual was tailing my car, or this single lighted vehicle drove off-road without a sound. 3. I've always believed in spirits, entities, ghosts, or whatever you want to call them. But the mischievous things I've seen working at this building have solidified them. Back in mid-September, I began a job on the downtown square of my town. The building I work in is old and full of history. A little history on the building. It was built in 1885, during the reconstruction of the town after a massive fire. Original tin ceiling, wooden floors, and handmade bricks. Served as many shops throughout its existence. Hardware, office supply store until about 5 years ago, when the large store was divided in two by a wall. Original owner was said to have taken his own life by sitting on the top of a keg of black powder left over from the Civil War and blowing it up. Although this is not confirmed, it's an interesting piece to the story. The building has been in the current owner's family since the late 60s to now. The first time I had an experience here was probably after about a month of working at the shop I'm at. I was watching the news on one of the TVs about to close for the night. I heard what seemed to be our door open and close very softly, usually slamming when people use it. I looked up quickly, saw nothing, or so I thought. Something made me look up again, and I saw what appeared to be the silhouette of a man dressed in what I thought was late 1800, early 1900 wear, gliding through the wall that was put up to divide the stores, accompanied by faint footsteps and a subtle smell of a pipe or cigar being smoked, which I have experienced before in my mom's office building, 2 doors down from this store. Unfortunately, I cannot 100% confirm it was the man's footsteps, as the store next door still had customers in it at that time. The next day I told my boss and owner what I saw, and she said she often sees and smells what I described. She went on to tell me how her grandfather, dad, and herself have all seen what I saw, or something similar. They all believe it was the original owner who is said to have died here. But it's never been aggressive. She said, "I just think he's here looking after his building, checking on us." 4. My mom decided to move the family, my little brother, stepdad, and myself, closer to my new high school back in 2007. It's a very quiet, friendly, typical white picket fence neighborhood. The house we bought was, of course, the runt of the street, because we weren't that wealthy. The old tenants left the place a mess, smelling of cigarettes, and stains all over the floor and walls. But that wasn't the only thing wrong with the house. When I first walked in, I felt sadness and fear. I was super hesitant on living there, but I had no choice. We renovated the entire house, and it looked all shiny and new. Within the 4 years that I lived there, we had it blessed about 40 times. No over-exaggeration. The doors would swing open, objects would move, things turned on, etc. It stopped after a while, and having it blessed so much, things didn't start showing its true colors until my sophomore year of college. I came back to live at home because I had just miserably failed my freshman year, and my grades were so bad the only place I could continue studying was community college. I'd hit rock bottom. It started with a dream. I woke up and opened my closet door. It was empty and pitch black. I immediately felt a heaviness on my chest and a blast of heat, as if there was a fire. I started praying, and right before finishing, I started choking. I was able to finally say Amen, and the closet door slammed shut. I woke up frantic and with cold sweat. I'd never felt that kind of fear in my life. As the year went on, things started acting up. My TV would be on when I came back home. The radio would turn on when I was home alone. My door would lock itself when I had no lock on my door. I brushed it off until one night I woke up and there was a tall, thin, dark figure standing in my doorway. His head almost touched the top. I rubbed my eyes and it was gone. Again I brushed it off, not wanting to face the possibility of a ghost, figuring I was just half asleep and seeing things. Finally one night it attacked. I woke up in the middle of the night thinking I heard someone. The second I laid back down I felt frozen. It felt like someone was sitting on my chest and like something had shut my eyes. I'd never felt so desperate and panicked. I tried to kick and scream, but I couldn't. I started feeling heat against my face, similar to the one in my dream, and started praying inside my head. I started choking as I tried saying Amen, and my sheets started to slip off my body. Finally, I was able to cough out a loud Amen, and I could move again. My bed sheets were on the ground and my closet was wide open. I ran to my mom's room and we prayed for half the night. We prayed every night until I moved back out for my junior year of college. It stopped once we started praying a lot. I know it's still there, but it seems to be dormant or something. Hopefully, it stays that way. 5. My grandmother was very ill. My mother and her visiting sisters were in the room where Grandma was, and my dad and my toddler, very young brother were outside, sitting in the living room. This story was told by my dad, who is a no-nonsense man, who doesn't believe in the paranormal mostly. He also doesn't scare easy, having been through some crazy, unbelievable-sounding Korean military training back in the day. He said that while they were sitting around, my brother told him, "Daddy, a person just came in. I'll try my best to translate." And my dad said, "Where?" My brother pointed toward an invisible, moving figure and said, "They're walking toward the piano." A moment later my dad goes, "What are they doing?" to entertain my brother. Then my brother goes, "They're sitting on the piano chair now." I'm not sure if he saw this figure as a woman or a man, as the Korean language does not use pronouns. My dad looked around the living room, and he didn't see anything. My dad said, "How do they look like, my brother?" "They're covered in black, Daddy." Within a minute my dad heard the women suddenly wail from inside the room. He wondered what it was. Then my mom came out crying, saying my grandma just passed away. Needless to say, my dad was flabbergasted, and still says to this day that it was a very strange, unexplainable experience. Some background. In Korean folklore, it is believed that when someone is about to die or has died, they are met by one or two human-like figures clad in black. They are called Jusungseja, which translates to lions of the afterlife. Their appearance in front of people is a very frightening experience. They act as guides who will walk you to the afterlife. They are supposed to be invisible to everyone else but you. But some believe that they show themselves to certain individuals. Seeing them means that it is your time to go, or someone else's that you're close to. Many Koreans claim to have seen them when their relatives or friends were about to pass. On a less relevant note, when I lived there, I grew up with stories of these death lines, dokebis, and ghosts, especially ghosts of women. Dokebis are like goblins who play tricks on you. Most of them are not pleasant tricks. If you see little blobs of floating fire in the night, such as blue or green floating flames, then that means that dokebis are around. They show themselves as these flames to humans. If you go to Buddhist temples in the mountains of South Korea, you'll see depictions of them in wall paintings or stone statues. But I have grown up with the idea that they are these funny-looking little demon or goblin-like creatures that have horns growing out of their heads and fangs hanging out. They carry wooden clubs. Ghosts and mythological creatures like the liver-eating nine-tails are almost always women in Korean stories around death. I was told that this is because women throughout Korean history were treated very badly and unfairly. So the ghosts of these wronged women stick around in grief, crying sorrowfully and trying to take others with them, as they have become these hollow, vengeful apparitions who hold very strong grudges and want others to feel the same pain they do. Many stories end with these ghostly women being purified, graciously and thankfully vanishing away if you do something for them, such as burying the remains of her baby next to her remains. Moreover, there was no notion of the underworld for me, as in heaven and hell are literally in the sky or deep underground. It was more lateral than vertical, if you know what I mean. The afterlife didn't signify going under somewhere like hell, but more like slipping into an unknown place only the death lines can travel through. I never really thought about death in terms of heaven or hell, even though my mother is actually Catholic. I guess talks about religion and such were just not as big or relevant as it is in America. Also, Korea has a long history of shamanism, and they still practice today. Fascinating to watch, lots of dancing, noise, and strong emotions. My mom believes in the power of shamans as well. Something in the apartment. My family, including one aunt and her kids, moved to America in 2001 or 2002 with the help of a friend. The apartment we moved into had strange happenings. The family friend would try to tease us about the spoopy ghosts, saying where we were used to be a huge burial ground for Native Americans. I never concerned myself with this or believed him since I was a kid, but later found this info about my old home online. The natives must not have been counted because this area was the winter home of a large group of Native Americans. They followed the rivers and the ridges high up into the mountains that lay to our east. For the summer, they came back to this area for the winter. They had a fairly large burial ground. There were many holes in the rocks that were used for grinding acorns into flour for food. Also, several holes are in the rocks at where the natives got water. The friend said the burial grounds were dug up and torn apart to make way for the houses and apartments here. One day my sister, brother, me, and my two cousins were watching cartoons on TV in the living room. This was very soon after we moved in. All of us started smelling this foul stench out of nowhere. We started yelling, "Ah, what is that smell? Who farted?" It smelled like something rotten and disgusting. My sister described the smell to be like a rotting, congealed mess of dead things, rusty like old coins and blood. We lived there for quite a lot of years. During those years, my aunt and cousins went back to Korea. I had some weird things happen. Not only the gross smells that came and went very quickly. All of us felt like there was a certain presence there. It felt like we were being watched all the time. Even my mother, who always adamantly denied ghosts exist, was overheard by me on the phone, saying she feels a strange foreign something here, and that it was really creeping her out. One time I was home alone watching SpongeBob on TV as usual. It was still daytime. All of a sudden the power went out, and everything reset, and the television turned off and on with a loud sound of static. The hair stood up all over my body and I was freaking out. My brain was telling me, "Get out, get out, get out." But being the somewhat rational kid I was, I frantically pushed on the remote control power button, and every other button when that didn't work. I think I tried to turn the TV off manually as well. Everything felt like I was in danger, and I threw the remote down and just ran outside. I was extremely scared and only went inside cautiously when the rest of my family came back from the trip at night time. Years later, my brother said that that happened to him as well, when he was home alone in that apartment. Same apartment. Apparition. Skip to my teenage years. I got really into playing MMORPGs. I have always been into video games. One night, I was playing the game as usual, while everyone else went to bed. Around this time, my older sister started sleeping in the living room, instead of the room where everyone else slept, because she said she felt dap-dap, Korean word for heavy, stuffy feeling or feeling very frustrated in the room. Anyways, I turned off my computer and went to go brush my teeth. I left the bathroom door open which looks out to the living room. I was feeling perfectly fine brushing my teeth. Then I felt this extremely intense feeling of being watched. I looked up into the bathroom mirror, but I didn't see anything behind me. All I could see was the tip of my sister's head on the floor. This feeling was so strong though. So I pretended to wash and dry my face, then quickly turned around looking at the same place I was looking at in the mirror. I saw a girl standing there that I hadn't seen in the mirror, with her eyes wide and mouth hanging open. She looked just as surprised as I was to see her. I don't trust my memory because our brains could be funky sometimes, but I remember that she looked like a teen, older than I was, had long straight hair and seemed fairly solid but kind of faded in a gradient effect around the edges, so I couldn't exactly see if she had feet or not. She might have been emitting a faint light. After what seemed like forever was probably a split second, the girl broke eye contact with me and kind of ran away toward the side of the living room that I couldn't see round the corner. If she had feet, she would have stepped on my sister's face directly. I just stood there with the same expression she wore, then rounded the corner to see where she'd gone. She vanished, of course. Same apartment, my sister's experience. After some time had passed, since my little incident with the ghost girl, we were all sleeping in the same arrangement. My sister in the living room, my mom and kid brother on the floor of our room, and me on the bed. We weren't exactly rolling in money, and it's not considered weird or inappropriate in Korean culture to sleep in the same room or bed with your family. I was just snoozing away when I was woken up by screams and my sister barging into the room in hysterics. My mom and bro woke up as well. My mom tried to calm my sister down, but she was bawling uncontrollably and unable to get words out. After a while, she finally told us that she was slapped or punched very hard in the face. She said she felt and heard something breathing on herself, but ignored it and fell asleep. Then she was woken by this violent punch. My mom said she was being pressed down with scissors, a Korean term for sleep paralysis. She explained that it happened to teens a lot because of stress. My sister said she's been hearing or feeling breathing on her face for a while now, every night. But she also chalked it up to sleep paralysis or whatever. She never slept in the living room again since then. It felt like, after living for almost a decade or so there, I had a hunch this presence only lingered around the living room, not anywhere else around the apartment. We actually got a little pup a year or two before we moved out. As the pup grew older, she would keep looking at and aggressively barking at something in the air. I thought it weird, but figured maybe she's onto something. After a while of my dog being there, the feeling of being watched and this presence disappeared. We had a completely normal time before moving out of there. Shadow person. Another one of my sister's experiences. I don't really believe it though, because it was probably just a sleepwalking thing. We were living in Korea at the time. My sister said she suddenly woke up from sleeping and looked down the open door into the hallway. She said she saw a humanoid, completely black figure crawling out of the bathroom into the hallway in a very twisted and erratic manner. but it didn't make any noise, completely silent. This only happened once. My weird sleep paralysis experience, and best friend passing. My best friend and I were in high school at the time. We grew up together and were very close since we were kids. We were just spending another late night doing homework that we always put off, and playing an MMORPG. It was late, and I was really tired. I said I was going to take a nap, so I went to the room where my sister and I slept. As soon as I laid down, I saw the corner of the room being pitch black. The room was fairly well lit, by the moonlight usually, and the thing being so black had me wondering why that corner, which I always faced when going to bed, was blacker than black that night. As I stared at it, the darkness seemed to grow, almost. I heard a low, rumbling, growling. I was like, what the fuck? Then I started hearing faint screams all around. There was a man's voice, a woman's, and a child's. They were screaming things, sounding like they were panicking and trying to warn someone or pleading with someone. It seemed like the screaming came from every direction. As the really dark thing moved closer and closer to me, the screams grew louder and clearer. I was watching this little black hole-looking thing crawling across the floor and climbing up my bed in sort of a trance. I heard the man, woman, and the child's voice screaming something like, "Get away!" and some other things that I can't really remember exact phrases of. When the ball of darkness touched me, my entire body froze up. I couldn't move. I was terrified. I tried and tried to scream and move, but it felt like I was wound up tightly. My sister was sound asleep, and I tried to call out to her or touch her for help. The thing started growling again. This time it sounded like multiple voices, and it came closer and closer to my face from my feet. I felt an incredibly heavy weight on my stomach and chest. I could still hear the screams. One of them screaming, "No!" This thing was so close to my face now, and it felt so heavy I couldn't breathe. I don't remember if I saw its eyes or not, but it said, very loudly and clearly, "Fuck you!" in English. It sounded fucking horrifying with its multiple growling voice. I thought this would be the last moments of my life at the time. Then I heard the door barge open and the lights turn on. It was my friend, looking panicked, yelling, "Are you okay? I heard screaming." Everything, the screams and all, vanished instantly. I broke down in tears, and I just couldn't stop crying. It was one of the most terrifying experiences I've had at the time. I kept trying to explain, stuttering and eating tears that I tried so hard to scream for help, but I couldn't make a sound or move at all. I can't believe my sister slept through the whole things, until my friend barged in. She would have woken up if I was yelling for help. My friend took me back to her place and I slept over there. I had an inkling of, "I don't want to leave my sister here, it's dangerous," in my traumatized thoughts. But I was so afraid and just a blabbering mess, and couldn't do anything other than follow my friend's guide to her place. I think I asked her how she knew to come in right then, and she just said she heard screaming and crying for help. This friend passed away not long after in a car accident that could have very much been prevented. Sucks how life works. I was a hysterical wounded animal for weeks, and I wished and wished for her to contact me from the other side, if there was one. I've had plenty of dreams in which she came back alive or as a zombie, etc. But I felt almost like I was betrayed by the paranormal things when I didn't receive any sign that she still existed, somewhere, somehow. Funnily enough, or not funnily enough, she actually told me that if she died, I should tell her parents that she would want to be cremated instead of put in the ground. She said she wanted to be free and parts of her traveling and blending into the air, the ocean, what have you, instead of being buried, trapped in the ground for eternity. She passed very shortly after this, like in a few days or so. Her parents and her brother cremated her and traveled to sea to spread her ashes. Now a voice calling. I haven't had anything that paranormal since the last incident. I live in a house out in the countryside now. The only strange things that have happened are, before I moved in, my housemates said they had things move around during the night. One of them said they were deeply depressed for some reason when she stayed in one of the upstairs bedrooms, but was perfectly happy again when she moved into the room right across from it. The house owner told me much later that a very depressed woman killed herself in that room before they bought the house. The girl that moved out never knew. I thought I heard footsteps coming from the same room while I was home alone doing the dishes. Trick of the ears. Probably. One time I was in the middle of getting dressed after a sweaty workout when a voice called from outside. We have 3 dogs here, and they were watching me struggle with my clothes, waiting for their dinner. While I was moving about, a male voice that sounded like one of the housemates said a little outside my room, "Dobby, come!" in sort of a commanding, aggressive-ish sounding way that I've never heard him do before. Dobby is one of the dog's name. Despite the name, he's a bigger dog. Dobby curiously walked outside the room. The other dogs were doing the same, and they all were staring up at the place the voice had come from. Usually the dogs go crazy happy when someone comes home and runs right over and try to jump up on them to get some lovin'. But they seemed curious, but cautious this time. Their tails were all upright and standing still. I don't know what that means, but it sure as hell wasn't wagging. I walked toward them after getting dressed, very much expecting to encounter my housemate outside. But I went out there and saw nothing at all. In just a short time, like 5 minutes, the housemate I was expecting came home and parked at the place the voice had come from. The dogs went berserk this time. Weird. Another friend of mine said they were probably reacting to subtle body language that I wasn't aware of making. Well, I'm all storied out. I hope you guys enjoyed this at least a little. Peace. Edit. I couldn't think of any more earlier, but I have one more. I traveled out of state with some friends on a little road trip. We came upon this homely little town and decided to stay at a motel-like place. It was a nice place, sort of like cabins instead of run-of-the-mill motel rooms. After sightseeing, we came back to our room and unpacked some things, and chilled out for a couple of hours before going to bed. We had a lot of trouble sleeping because the couple upstairs were having a screaming match. We were like, oh great, now we're not going to be able to sleep. All 4 of us listened to the couple argue all night. Most of it was a man's voice yelling angrily, and a woman crying and wailing loudly. We couldn't really make out what they were saying, but after a while, we heard the same yelling, screaming, crying. Then we heard a loud thud, like something fell on the floor. The yelling and crying stopped immediately. It was silent after that. We debated amongst ourselves whether we should call the cops or not. We eventually fell asleep. The next morning we were checking out, and one of us told the clerk we had trouble sleeping because of a couple fighting loudly all night upstairs, while making small talk. She pulled up some records or something, and she told us that no one had stayed in that room last night. She said she gets strange complaints like this quite a lot. According to her and a couple of locals there, the town is well known to be haunted. I don't know if they were fucking with us or not, but it was a bit unsettling. Hey everyone, Hellfreezer here, and thank you very much for listening to 5 True Paranormal Stories, episode 41. Thank you very much to everyone who allowed their stories to be used in this video. Well, let's see, what's this? This is Friday now. And I'm hoping you're all having a very good weekend. As you're listening to this, I will very likely be working on making the weekend's videos. I promise I will take a bit more care with them this week, so we can avoid any little mistakes that we had with last week's video. It was just a little thing, but you know, when I realize these things have slipped me by, it does bug me. Well, okay, with that I'm going to head off for now, so until next time, thank you very much for listening, and take very good care of yourselves.